we have to ask the question, Daryl, are we supposed to believe that Khrushchev didn't know that the man behind these leaks was Rothschild?
Of course
That like he himself would know that Burgess, Philby and McLean were there. So that's why when it comes to calling the favors in, the Rothschilds are able to turn around and say, you got the nuke, you got these plane diagrams, you got submarine, you got all the latest tech, you got everything. We gave you that, so we're calling the favors in. That's the way the mafia works. There's Khrushchev and all the other leaders of the key leaders of the Soviet Union knew that it was coming from Rothschild directly.
Yeah, and the same thing can be said about China. When they had Mao holed up in his cloistered rooms, and they had the Great Leap Forward and all this. He was a big, fat, overweight pedophile who had young children delivered to him, and they said he had green teeth and everything. The guy was a filthy pig. He didn't wash himself. He didn't brush his teeth. And this is coming from now. If you take a look now, he is almost a deity in China. Still, he's almost a deity. And if you read the book, The Jews of China, and understand that everybody around him and the whole design of his thing, he was selected over Chiang Kai-shek because Chiang Kai-shek was starting to go off the reservation somewhat, and they chose Mao over him because they wanted this communist ideal to be what was going to hold sway in China, which basically meant that they would be at odds with the rest of the world. And essentially they weren't, though. They were just a closed country. They just closed their doors. The Americans,
They did actually expel the Jews, though, and there was a point subsequent to that the synagogues were closed down and the last Jews were thrown out. There was literally just a handful left in the whole country. So they did get rid of them, and it was the same part of the Communist Party that withdrew from the what was the post-Second World War agreement, because that was the big one. Russia was obviously a member of that whole sort of control mechanism post-Second World War on how currencies were meant to interact and their relationship to the dollar. That was all
Bretton Woods agreements.
Sorry, Daryl?
Bretton Woods, was that?
Yeah, the Bretton Woods Agreement, all of that had been structured out in the United States by the Rothschilds. So even the input from somebody like Keynes got sidelined. Keynes didn't want the final agreement to be what it was. He put forward alternative structures because he was an academic. He wasn't part of the crime gang per se. He was just an academic who had a few ideas. But the crime gang put this together as their next stage, post the creature from Jekyll Island, as it's known. And from there, the Chinese and the Russians and all these big countries, they were all involved in Bretton Woods. They all subscribed to it and they all went along with it. And even during the Soviet period, the Soviets were still aligned with it, but the Chinese did pull out for a short period of time, but they're plugging back in now, and this is part of the problem, Daryl. The influence in China at the moment is that they've let these people back in en masse, and they're buying off what the ordinary rank and file Chinese call the princelings. The princelings are the children of the leading lights of the Communist Party, and they've been described by the die-hard communists who are still around today, who hate these people, as turtle eggs. What they're saying is that they might be biologically descendant from the fathers, but they're not ideologically descendant, and these people are not proper communists. So there actually is a genuine communist ideology in China. It's lost a lot of its influence and power, and that influence and power now is with these princelings who've managed to strike deal with Goldman Sachs and the like. And find themselves in these highly paid positions.
Well, we know that a lot of the tech that was being exported under Clinton to Israel was going directly to China.
Oh yeah, the Chinese, because what we know is that if you do the favors, this is the Victor Rothschild piece, if you do the favors to the Soviet Union, ostensibly behind the back door and under the table and brown paper bag and meeting in the dark in the woods, and all that, all these covert meetings, you release all these secrets, you buy goodwill. And this goes back to the point about the destroying American goodwill whilst buying their own personal goodwill with stolen US technology. I mean, it's just outrageous. They keep blaming the Chinese for spying. There's all these accusations about cyber hacking. The Chinese don't need to cyber hack. They just go to Israel with a shopping list of what they'd like. And the Israelis hand it over. And as we know, Pollard, for goodness sake, Pollard got released.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Of course.
Absolutely disgraceful behaviour. Yeah. The guy should never, and he was a traitor. This guy's he's not a criminal. He wasn't caught with weed or heroin or speed or coke or something. He was a traitor against the nation state. He's been released. It's outrageous.
Yeah. And it barely shows a blip on the mainstream media because they own it. Well, now, see, here's the other side of this, Mohammed. We're talking about the SWIFT system, and I'm telling you that this parallel system being built by the Chinese is actually SWIFT with a new name, because the British have access to the new system, the Frankfurt Germans do. In other words, the system that they're setting up as this parallel system, they're saying it's outside of SWIFT. I think it's SWIFT. It's exactly SWIFT, but SWIFT has the Americans in it. When they launch this one, it'll have all the same characters except America.
Well, they've abandoned the development of it now. They don't need to develop it anymore.
Well,
because the thing is that they've had
just went online yesterday, Mohammed, the SWIFT system. They said that they lit it off. It's now under operation.
No, that's for domestic clearing only.
Oh, no. This one, well, according to the report, it's for bilateral trade and for international trade with Brazil and with South Africa, and it's supposedly live for all trade with this new bloc, and it's supposedly. Now, whether or not that's true or not it remains to be seen, but the report says it's for all trade. And I'm thinking, that because India and China, well, Rothschild said in '92 speech that India was going to be his new country of, to set himself up in. And of course, India has never broken free from the Zionist control, even though they think they're independent. You notice that anytime anybody started thinking independently in India, they got assassinated.
Well, I think it's very important, Daryl, not to confuse the BRICS Bank, which they put together.
Not the BRICS Bank. This is the trade and settlement system. It was just
that'll be the trading and settlement system of the BRICS Bank. So the purpose of the BRICS Bank is to allow or to facilitate a settlement process between the BRICS members, which is another attempt, and that one's a Russian initiative at trying to create an independent parallel system. The Chinese were attempting to do it, but what's happened is that the Chinese have been, they've been given this large carrot, which basically says, how do you fancy being part of strategic drawing rights, and how do you fancy having a seat on the IMF and the World Bank? And they're basically being told, you can try and encourage people to join a parallel system, or you can have a very large slice of the current system. And at the last, unfortunately, at the last moment, they've decided to go for the influence. And that influence is also meant allowing the British to apply to join for membership of the Asian Development Bank, which was another attempt at Chinese influence around the Asian area. And all you have to do is, and you see this repeating over and over and over again, Daryl, is if you want your own influence, why are they there? It's very simple. If you want your own influence, then you create a forum for Asian people of Asian nations that's run by Asian people, that doesn't need to have any of the usual suspects on the advisory board joining in. As soon as you get them in there, they'll be stood there tutting. Well, of course, that's not a very good idea. Why don't we try doing this? It's all about influence. This comes back to the point. It doesn't matter who's issuing the renminbi, just so long as they decide where it goes. It's the control of the flows. That's what they're after with all of this, Daryl. And unfortunately, the Chinese, there are maybe a small number of them that are proper communists that really would like to have that independence. But there's another group there who are remembering, like Khrushchev remembers, who's giving them the current patent technology, and Pollard's free to do it all over again. What kind of message does that send out to all the other would-be Israeli thieves of American technology? Don't worry, life doesn't mean life.
Yeah.